Hi guys, this video is going to be talking about subtracting decimals. Subtract decimals. Okay? First thing you need to do if you're going to subtract decimals, number one, line up the decimals. Line up the decimals. You cannot move around the decimals. The decimals have to be in line. It goes straight down all the way through. As a star, if your number does not have a decimal, the decimal is after the whole number, is after the last digit. So, if I have something like 1 52/100, there's my decimal. But if I have something like 25, I still have a decimal. It's right there. I just tack it on to the very end. They didn't give us a decimal, so I tack it on to the very end. Otherwise, everything is exactly the same as subtraction. You still sit here and borrow, and you still have to make sure that well, we'll get into negatives on another day. Today we're not worrying about the negatives, we're just worrying about straight up subtraction of the decimals. So if we have 6 5/10 minus 3 9/10, I ask myself, can I take, first of all, the decimal stays in the same place, okay? The decimal is lined up, straight down, zoom. I ask myself, can I take 9 from 5? I cannot. That means I do not go 9 minus 5 is 4. I have to ask 5 minus 9 is what? I can't do that, so let's borrow. That 6 becomes a 5. I'm going to put a 1 there so that 5 can become a 15. 15 minus 9 is 6. And 5 minus 3 is 2. That's all that we're doing. It is 2 6/10. 4 23/100 minus 2 51/100. 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 minus 5, I can't take 5 out of 2. I have to go borrow. So that becomes a 3, that becomes a 12. 12 minus 5 is, that one's one of the harder ones, 7. Decimal point stays in the same place. 3 minus 2 is 1. Yes, Mrs. Wallace has problems with a couple of the subtraction ones. When I run into a problem with it, I sit here and I think, okay, so 5 plus what would give me the 12? That's how I do it. I'll sit there and I'll switch it back to an addition problem instead of keeping it as a subtraction problem, because most of the facts that I learned and have memorized are addition facts, not subtraction facts. So that's a trick that I use for that one. 8 6/10 minus 3. Well, 3 doesn't have a decimal point, except it does. It has a decimal point right there. It's an imaginary decimal point. You can't actually see it, and if you want to, you can put in the 0 so that it holds the place. 6 minus 0 is 6. The decimal point goes there. 8 minus 3 is 5. So I end up with 5 6/10. All right, fine. This is perfectly fine. But what about when we have something like this? 3 minus 2 5/100. Ooh. Well, we still have the decimal point. Yeah? And I can put as many zeros here as I want to. So I'm going to put 2 zeros because for this case, I actually need the 2 zeros. 0 minus 5. I have nothing. I can't take 5 out of that. So I need to go borrowing, except that 0 doesn't have anything for me to borrow from. So I need to go borrowing again. That 3 becomes a 2. I then come over here and I bring the 1 to make that a 10, but it can't be a 10 because I had to borrow from it. So it's now a 9, and this one becomes a 10. Do you see what I did there? So 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 0 is 9. My decimal point stays there. And 2 minus 2 is 0. And so I end up with that. Now, what'll happen sometimes, what they'll give to you occasionally, is something like this. 14 23/100 minus 6/1000. All the way out there. Still have to line up by the decimal point. I can't shift it over. I can't go, oh, there's 4 numbers and then 4 numbers. I'll just shift it over one. I can't do that. I have to line up by that decimal point. That decimal point has to stay there. So then we bring the decimal point down. If only there was one more number up top, right? But there's not, which means I have to put in my 0. I can't do it any other way. So I can't take 6 from 0. I have to go borrowing. The 3 becomes a 2. The 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. 2 minus 0 is 2. 2 minus 0 is 2. 4 minus 0 is 4. 1 minus 0 is 1. So I end up with 14 224,000ths. And yes, 1,000 is a hard word to say. Just be glad we're not doing 10,000 or 100,000 or, well, I guess millionths is easier than thousandths. Okay. So let's look at this. If I have 56 93/100 minus 22 4/10. Okay, 56 93/100 minus 22 4/10. I would then sit here and rewrite this. 56 93/100 minus, I have to line up by the decimal point. So my decimal point for the top was there. That means my decimal point for the bottom is at the same place. Numbers before it is 2 of them. Numbers after it is 1 of them. So I end up with that. My decimal point goes down and just hangs out there. In this particular one, I have a choice of whether to put a 0 there or not. I don't really need it. I can just go 3 minus nothing, or I can put a 0 there. I'll put the 0 there so that you can see it. 3 minus 0 is 3. 9 minus 4 is 5. Decimal point's already there. 6 minus 2 is 4. And 5 minus 2 is 3. If you go down, and that's how we do the subtraction with decimals. If you go down underneath the video, inside the description box, there is a worksheet with 5 problems on it that you can give a shot and see whether or not you've figured out how to do the subtraction. Have a great day. Bye.